and welcome to the Collaboration Conversation, a listener-supported video podcast where Christian artists, entrepreneurs, and friends share about their upcoming projects and how they are using the gifts and talents that God has given them. This podcast is only made possible through generous listeners and friends like you, and we are so very grateful for our supporters. If you would like to sponsor an episode, head on over to thecollaborationconversation.org and click sponsor an episode. Likewise, if you want to check out or support our nonprofit ministry project Brickworks, head on over to projectbrickworks.org. Today, our very special guest is Micah Caronna. Micah is the senior pastor at Living Word Family Church in Wake Forest, North Carolina. He is also the producer and director for Living Word Studios. Combining a passionate filmmaker with a creative and caring pastor, Micah loves questioning the status quo and working with a team to make the impossible happen. Micah's destiny is to help others find theirs. He loves recognizing untapped potential and nurturing it to its fullest, which I have witnessed firsthand. Hey, Micah. How are you? It's good to see you.
I'm great. How are you all doing?
We are doing well. It's good to have you with us.
Good. Love being here. Excited.
It's very cool when very often we have guests on that we do not know in any capacity, that we've never met them before. And that's always fun and nerve-wracking. But this is going to be super fun and chill because we've known each other for a very long time. Quite possibly the longest of anybody we've ever interviewed, for me at least.
For you, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would agree.
Old friends.
Yes.
Not that you're old,
yes.
Or I'm old, but
right.
We are old friends.
But we just are old friends, yes. I was like, should I introduce him as my boss? I mean, because he is it was funny. I was friend/boss.
That works. How are you?
I'm doing very good.
Good?
Doing very well.
Y'all keeping busy?
Always. Too busy. We need to slow down.
Yes, as do we. Well, obviously we go way back, but before we get started and jumping into ministry and things like that, if you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners a little bit about you, your family, and your ministry.
Sure, absolutely. So my wonderful wife, Melissa, of 27 years, we dated for 6 years. We met as teenagers in high school.
Aww.
And dated all through high school and college, and we both graduated within a couple weeks of each other, and we were married within a week of that. So,
wow,
nice.
I love that story.
So we've been high school sweethearts and best friends for decades. And then about 20 years ago, we adopted our first and only son, Josiah, and so he's 19 now and is in college playing soccer. And just loves that. So that's our family, our immediate family, and we have a blast together. We love each other a lot. And then as far as ministry goes, I am the senior pastor of Living Word Family Church. I've been in this church for 25 years, somewhere around in there. And just within the last 2.5 years, my wife and I assumed the senior pastorate. We're co-pastors here, and so we've been senior pastors for 2 years. And in that quarter of a century of ministry here, we've done everything from youth pastors, children's pastors, like First Impressions helps ministry, worship, video development, marketing and advertising, and outreach. So, and probably other things that I don't.
You
remember.
were ready to be the senior pastor. You've done it all.
We were leadership nomads.
Yes.
Just whatever needed to be done was where we were at. And so a few years ago, we used to do these huge stage productions when I was a worship pastor. And so we had a lady come to us with a script, and we really liked it, but it was in like 40 scenes and 17 locations. So we were going to be spending more time changing set than we were actually, doing the production. So we had a pretty robust video department at that time. And so we just prayed and was like, hey, what if we made this into a movie? And so we just felt led to do that, and terrified. We began to proceed with that, just, terrified we were going to add to the giant list of bad Christian movies. Oh. And so I literally bought Filmmaking for Dummies and read it through multiple times. And we just grabbed whatever volunteers we had, whatever equipment that we had, and we made our first film. So that birthed Living Word Studios, which right now we're in post-production for our 5th film and development for our 6th. And so that's been kind of our journey into ministry and just loving every minute of it.
That's amazing. I'm so in awe. Well, I was gonna say sometimes, but pretty much all the times of how you're able to run both a church and a film studio. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you survive and sleep at night?
Well, I think people ask me about that, and it's kind of like filmmaking is my hobby, and I love both pastoring as well as filmmaking, and I won't lie, it is a lot. So to have a vision for a ministry and be able to kind of foresee the future and what God has for us in the future of a church, as well as managing that church with about 12 employees. And then in addition to that, ministering, every week. So they say that if a pastor teaches one time a week over the period of a year, that is the equivalent to writing about 4 novels a year.
Oh, wow.
So just the content production, being able to hear from the Holy Spirit, what your congregation needs, generating that material, and sometimes borrowing and stealing materials from, hey, we're going to do a book study now because of those kind of things. But, and then in addition to that, helping in development and then being a producer and a director, it is a lot. And when you love what you do, it doesn't feel so much like work.
Yeah.
And there are parts that you don't like, that you do so that you can do the things that you do love and you do like. But I've been blessed that I'm kind of have usually people are very creative or people are very administrative and organized, and I kind of have my foot in both sides of that. I'm relatively highly technical as well, so I kind of end up being a jack of all trades, master of none, but just doing my best to make sure that that I'm staying balanced, and all of that along with my family life that takes priority over all that. So it is a juggle for sure.
Well, you guys do it so beautifully, and Melissa is such a great asset to that as well.
Oh, she is definitely. She's the one that keeps me on track. I just fly off the rails if it wasn't for my wonderful wife, and she's constantly, hey, you need to slow down, and so she knows before I know when I'm heading for the wall, so to speak.
Yes.
But it's always the swan on top of the lake looks graceful, and underneath, is the mad
pedaling. Well, you mentioned earlier about your first film, which was Another Chance, and now you're in your post-production on your 5th and pre-production on your 6th. What was your second film? What was?
Gee, I found this amazing actor.
That's not where I was going with that.
That was a great setup. I like that.
No, I did want to talk about Fat Chance. We actually just had a podcast, or we just did a podcast where I kind of shared about how I got into that production and like all of the craziness that God ordained for that to happen. But
that was a great podcast. I watched it.
Did you watch that one?
Yeah.
It was interesting that we weren't friends back then. That I didn't know you, but it felt like I knew you the whole time. But it just was crazy how that came about. But I'd love to chat with you about your experience with Fat Chance a little bit before we start talking about some of your upcoming projects. So how did the story for Fat Chance come about for you to tell it?
So we had a couple in our church that shared a testimony on a testimony night that was the film was based off of. And we had just finished actually maybe we were in production for our first film when I heard this testimony, and I thought, wow, that would make an amazing movie. So we talked with them about, hey, we have this inspiration, because it's very loosely based upon their story.
Right.
But we had this inspiration based upon your story. Would you be okay, if we did that? And they were, and as long as there were a couple of stipulations, but they were fine with it. And so we were really, really excited about it. And up until that point, our first film was only actors pretty much from our church and kind of our current network. And within this role, Allison was she had to be a specific age. She had to be a specific body size. There were specific things that kind of went along with that.
Right.
And so we really didn't feel like there was anybody within our network that could really pull that off. And so that's when we kind of posted up on we had a friend posted on some different places. And so we had multiple submissions. You were one of them. And I'll never forget when we first connected, or we were supposed to do that, you were traveling. You were in Europe somewhere.
I was in Ireland. Yeah.
Ireland. Yeah. On a vacation. And I just remember, I think it was the signal was choppy and different things like that.
Oh, I remember. It's like, I left. I was like, there's no way they're going to hire me for that.
Well, I think there was an immediate, and I don't want to over spiritualize it at
Fair.
all. But there was immediate connection where it was like, yep, this is the person. And so we had interviewed several people, about that role, and it was just an immediate fit. And I've learned throughout, the course of ministry to recognize, when that, there's sometimes you're like, I don't know. And there's sometimes it's like, definitely no. But I had seen your work on, I think your reel with Sway, and you had, I think, in another film, and I'd seen your work and was impressed with that. And then you had sent us a tape, and I just there was that moment where it's like, yep, this is it. And then when I met you, and how kind and gentle, and there was just a connection there.
Yeah, for sure. And then we ended up being friends and working together for 6 years. So it was definitely a thing.
Yeah, it was funny when, our editor fell through, and I was just asking you, hey, I didn't know you edited. And so do you know anybody that edits? And you're like, well actually.
I do. Pick me.
I kind of do. And so, and that must have been really hard to edit yourself. I guess you had done it with Sway. I had, that.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not, I don't know. I talked about this with someone before, but it's such a weird, I actually enjoy it more than like regular editing, not because I'm looking at myself, but I don't know. There's something about it. I'm able to like remove it from myself, and I don't know. That sounded weird. I might cut that, but I actually enjoy it very much. I'm like, yeah, ooh, that was bad. Let's not do that. Let's take that out.
I've always thought that you liked having not a control for control's sake, but just like, oh, that was not a good angle. Let's do this one.
I do.
Yeah, wouldn't every actress or actor like to be able to?
Yes.
I think it's super narcissistic. That's super what it is. No. I was trying to dance around it, but that's totally what it is. I like picking which shots are going to be in the film.
Well, see, and I have a hard time with that, because anything that I write, anything that I create, I feel like I am super aware that my baby's prettier than everybody else's baby.
Yeah.
And so, so because I'm aware of that, I'm like, I'm not sure if that's bad, and I'm just like, I'm looking at it with,
rose-colored glasses. Yeah.
or no, that's really good, and you're being overcritical.
Yeah.
So I'm always like asking other people, like, please, I'm not looking for a pat on the back, but
tell me what you think. Yeah.
Be honest with me. Yeah. I don't need you to placate me. I need to know if I'm about to embarrass myself.
Yes. That's so funny. But yes, I look back on Fat Chance as such a, and I'm not going to over spiritualize this, but it was such a God thing for me. I was in a huge, it was a huge transition for me, and it's exactly where I needed to go and exactly the people that I needed to meet. So it was so wonderful, and I'm so grateful. And then obviously, like I said, it has blossomed into this work relationship where I've been working for y'all since then, and pretty consistently the whole time. And so it's been such a blessing to get to have been in that film. And then obviously people are still talking about it, which is crazy that, still getting messages that people are watching it. I'm like, when is this movie ever going to go? Okay. I'm fine with it not going away. That's great.
Yeah, no, I love it. Even, somebody was asking me about it this last week. And, so what I'm really excited, I have not been able to work with you as an actress since then.
Yes.
And so the one there's 6 that we're in development now. You're going to be leading in that, so I cannot wait for that, because I love working with you.
It's going to be really fun. I'm like keep telling people I'm moving to North Carolina for 2 months. Like telling them I'm unavailable, because you want to know why? I'm moving to North Carolina because I'm going to be in a movie with Micah again.
I may or may not have tried to get you 8 dozen times to move to North Carolina.
Yes, it is true. Hey, Mom. Mike asked me to move to North Carolina again. I feel like I've texted her that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and just from a mom's perspective, you want your daughter to be happy and in work that she enjoys and with people that she collaborates with and is creative with and stretches you and you can contribute. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful thing that has developed out of kind of, you were at a really tough time.
I know.
I love this.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It really is very special.
Well, I think there are times when you meet people who, A, there's a connection, but B, both sides of the relationship are like they encourage each other. It's not a give and take; it's a give and give. And I think whenever you have those situations, that's something that you should cherish and really cultivate. And I think, you know, your relationship with Melissa and I and Living Word, the church and the studio, has been that. And so that's pretty rare. You know, whether it be in friendship or in work situations. And so when you find those things, that's something that I tend to prioritize and really make him important to me. And so that's one of your all's relationship with us is one of those.
Well, I feel that. And it's really cool that we've been able to do that remotely. Like I've been working remotely for you guys for 6 years. What?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, even while you were in LA,
even like before working from home was like the thing to do.
Yeah.
Before pandemic times.
Well, so you just mentioned this morning as we were getting ready for this, you have a new radio show?
Yes.
Living Life Strong, or no, I'm sorry.
Living Strong with Micah Caronna.
Radio. I should learn the name of my radio show. It is basically taking messages from our Sunday morning and putting it live. And so there's a good friend, a lady here in the church that just had a vision for that and said, "Hey, can I help with that? I'll do it." And so she has just been such a huge blessing. And we've gotten some, you know, reports of that being a blessing in people's lives and that kind of thing. And so hats off to her. She's, like I said, she's been a huge blessing and just ran with that vision. So excited about that.
I love that. And for those of you who want to check that out, that is livingstrongradio.com. That's very cool. That's kind of been a new thing. I know that we did Living Life Strong, like a little series there for a bit. And it's kind of interesting how that kind of morphed into this radio show, which is pretty cool. So you've been in ministry for a very long time. And I would love to just hear if you have any favorite memories that you have from being in ministry. I guess that could be ministry, film side, or church side, either way, or both.
Specific memories, I think as I look back across, you know, the time that I've been in ministry, Melissa and I have been in ministry, one of the things that we're most proud of, which would be a memory, but it's kind of like all chunked together, is the multiple people that we were able to pour into, whether it be in youth ministry or in adult ministry, that are now pastors, either here on staff or in other churches. So even here in town, there are two of our teenagers that grew up that are pastors on staff at churches that are here in town. I still keep in touch with them. We have one teenager that was a missionary in Bolivia for like 20 years and has just returned home and is now doing some work for us here at the church. So I think, you know, looking back over the last 25 years of ministry, I think that's one. And, you know, like you mentioned in the beginning, that my heart and my purpose in life is to find others and help them that really want to walk out their calling and really kind of help them. Not that I'm their savior at all. There's no holes in my hand, but, you know, people that are just really, they want to, and I think one of the giftings that God has given me is, I call it a collector of puzzle pieces. And so I'm constantly, you know, I read voraciously, listen to books. I'm constantly podcasts and movies and different things like that. And I'm always collecting puzzle pieces. And I know a lot of times that this fits somewhere, and it may be an opportunity. I don't know who fits in that opportunity, but man, somebody fits there. And then later on, I run across somebody and get to know them and then connect those.
That's awesome.
Or it may be a movie where I get an idea, you know, but it's incomplete. And I just know that's a puzzle piece, or a ministry idea or endeavor or whatever. And I really kind of connect the pieces. So when I'm pouring into people and I see potential, that I can be a benefit to. It's those things where, it's more important for me that they feel fulfilled in what they're doing. And if I can create or even reveal an opportunity where I know that's what they were made for right there. And that just lights me up. And so across the years, just being able to do that for people that are within our church or, have partnered with the studio, then that really lights me up, and I'm excited about that.
That's cool. What about challenges? Anything that in your years of ministry where you just are thinking, oh my gosh, this was really tough, but we worked through it? Or
I think the time thing is always, like we were talking about, is always a challenge. Like just, being a local pastor and being, expected to run an organization in addition to write 4 novels a year, or the equivalent of writing 4 novels a year, that in itself is a challenge. So, and then you add on to that filmmaking and doing films, that is obviously a challenge. But coming with that challenge is where God is constantly sending you people that fit in certain places. And it's not that they're being used by the ministry, but it's that that they fit in a certain place, that they can find where they belong. And sometimes I can connect the two of, the whole with the puzzle piece. And so now with that comes its own challenges, because we all, as human beings, we have our own baggage and we have our own stuff, and we're all great at something, and God has skilled us and talented us with stuff. And then we all have stuff that's in the way as well.
Right.
And so when your life and your ministry and your purpose is other people, and other people are incredibly predictable, and other people, including yourself, are incredibly flawed and all that kind of stuff, it's when you can see the potential in somebody more than they can see it, where you find them squandering it, and you're just like, no, please, I just, I see what this is. After this long in ministry, you begin to see some of those things. And it's one of the biggest challenges for me is to let go of people who are not ready to step into their potential.
Yeah.
And I don't mean let go as in give up, but I mean, it's not my job to force them into those things. But when you can see it so clearly, but as a minister and as somebody who's loving, you've got to take your hands off for a little while. And that sometimes will just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the hardest thing for me, is to learn. And there were some times when I tried to force things early on in my ministry, because I could see it more than they could, and just realizing that it never worked for me, and it never works for them either.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, you kind of just touched on talents and gifts there for a hot second. So let's transition to that, because we love talking about talents and gifts. And something you were talking about, which is, what your destiny is, which is to help others figure out what theirs are and help them and help them walk into that. That is very similar to what we kind of created this ministry to be, which is to equip Christians to use those talents and gifts to build their brick for God as he builds his kingdom. And, we are all about trying to, it's so interesting because it's very similar to what you're doing, but it's nuancedly, that's not a word, different in the sense that we want to help make connections. So I'm hoping that there's a aspiring filmmaker who hears this and wants to connect with you, or an actor who wants to connect with you, or, in other interviews, whatever it may be, that we're also kind of making these connections. And so I would love to hear from you about what you feel like your talents and gifts are, and kind of how you've been cultivating them to really step into what your calling has been.
I know for a fact when you think about, that my role is to help other people, fulfill their potential. What I understand, and this seems to be inherent, not something that I had to learn, is that I'm not a ball hog at all. If tomorrow the person comes up and they have the potential and the teachability and all that kind of stuff to do any of the things that I do, that I'm immediately going to shift and begin, even if it's subtle. Usually people don't even know, because if you give people a carrot, then it's a little bit harder to find out, are they doing this because this is what God called them to do, or because they're looking for that title or whatever.
Yeah.
But all the time I'm looking for, the things that I do, and I feel like I'm pretty decent at. If there's somebody that's going to be as good or better than I am, then, I'm going to begin trying to make those connections with them and really kind of start handing particular things off to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have, on this last film that we did, we had a camera operator, and is very sharp, very good at what she does. And so then, I saw her beginning to learn things without even me asking her, trying to teach her. She's just picking up things. And so really mentored her into cinematography in the process. And so, we were talking about the Leadership Nomad, course that we've been on, was always, all right, so in youth ministry, we're going to raise up somebody else that we recognize, oh, you know what, they could do that as better, if not better than I can. Let me put them into place. And then we moved into another area, do the same thing. So, in every area that I'm in, there's this awareness that you're going to be there until you find somebody that is as good or better than you are. And if you can be a part of their growth process, then even better. That's even more fulfillment for me, to be able to pour into somebody else. And there are times where people come in and they think they are, but they don't have the experience that you do and that kind of thing. And so when you try to teach them, then they're like, oh yeah, I know that. So you're like, okay, so their potential is not quite there yet. But when you're finding people, and that's not to say that I know everything about everybody or everything, because there have been people that walked in and they're turnkey. I'm like, dang, why am I doing this? You just hand it over and it's much better than what I ever did. So I think those, that has come, when you're talking about giftings and skills. So giftings are something that you were born with, and skill is something that you develop.
Right.
And when you can combine the two and develop skill in something that you're gifted in, that's the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
But there are places that I have, that things that I was born with, and then there are things that I've had to learn, and it took a lot to learn that. And I think the giftings and talents is just that. I guess that leadership nomad is kind of that key. Is I'm going to hold it until the person that actually is gonna have it for the long term.
Yeah.
And be there and just try to recognize them and try to connect the dots and be led by the Holy Spirit, to do that and stay humble, and not, like I said, not be a ball hog or territorial. I see that all the time. People are just afraid, that, and even I tell my staff all the time is like, if you can delegate all your work and get all the ministry and get because the fivefold ministry is to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. So whenever we're doing it, that means we're not doing our job.
Right.
And so, when one of our staff can do that and come to me and go, hey, the saints are doing the work, so you got anything else for me to do? That's job security for you.
Right.
So in the corporate world, that would be like, well, then why do we need you if we have all these other people? But for me, okay, wow, that's somebody with high potential.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Very cool. Well, let's talk about some projects that we're working on, because we are working on them.
That's
but
right.
That you're working on. This interview is about you. We are working on Interim Pastor, which is going to be released next year, which is very exciting. You want to tell us a little bit about how that kind of came to be?
Interim Pastor was written by Jen Tobler, and it's a project where the heart of that is trusting God. And just as a pastor, it seems so cliche. Yeah, trust God. But there's a core foundation to the Christian faith that is just as simple as learning, especially when things are not going well, to just lean into Him and to trust Him. And so it's about a man who early in his childhood upbringing was scarred to the point that he equated God with God's people. And as I've mentioned, we're all very, very flawed. And so he lost his trust in God. And he ends up, we kind of find him as an adult, and he's a con artist and on the run from some people that he owes money to. He and his wife owe money to. They duck into a church to try to blend in with the crowd, and they are mistaken as the interim pastors of that church. And so the church has a building fund with some money in it that's about what he owes. So they decide to run a con on the church. They go ahead and run with it. In the meanwhile, they fall in love with the church falls in love with them, and they give their lives to Christ. So they have to figure out at that point, so what do they do? Because they've been lying to this church. They've got people that are on their tail, trying to get this money from them. So it is a family comedy that's a lot of fun, but it has a very, very strong message in it on just learning to trust God, and that when you trust God, it's easier to trust other people.
Yeah.
And because he's got you, right? So that's going to be a really, really fun project. I'm really excited about that. And we may even we're playing with some different names, maybe Imposter Pastor or something like that. So, but right now, Interim Pastor is the working title.
Yes.
So we're gonna have a premiere in February.
So exciting, and it's so funny.
I cannot wait.
It's very exciting, and I love editing, so I'm here for it.
Yep.
Good to see.
And it stars Michael J. Patterson, who I think you're going to have on as a guest soon, and then also Sharon Lanier, who you've already had on, I believe.
She was an awesome guest.
Amazing, amazing couple. Well, they're not a couple, but in the film.
Yes, they play off together very well. It was brilliant casting. Who cast that movie?
I think it was.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah, I owe that to you.
I'm just kidding. Sorry, I was so silly. No, they are a great pair. It also stars Stephanie Parker. We love her. She's great. We haven't had her on yet, but I'm sure that will happen.
Oh, she's on the list.
She's awesome.
Matt Moore, who was in Big Fix.
Yep, which is your fourth film.
Yeah, so he plays twin Swedish mobsters.
Yes, he does.
Which is hilarious. So
he's one of those actors that is so much fun to watch. He gives it his all. He has, he's not self-conscious at all about what he's doing. He just lets it go, and he's wonderful to watch. So we need to have him on there too. Every time you say Matt Moore, though, that's the name of my pastor too. So I'm like, wait, yes, actor Matt Moore, yes. But that's so funny. But yes, Interim Pastor will be out next February, and then you mentioned that we're going to work on another film next year as well. You guys are just cranking them out.
Yeah, we're our goal is one a year.
Yep.
And so looks like we're doing well with that. This next one, I don't know if we've named it or not. But,
not really.
No, not really. But I asked. I think it was been several years ago that you and I talked about an idea for a film, and so you have actually written this film, and I asked you to star in it as well. So like I said, I cannot wait for that. So,
which I guess this is that announcement, because I haven't really talked about it. So guess
this
is it.
You can edit that out either.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
So you're gonna cast it.
Oh no!
You're gonna write it. You're gonna cast it. You're gonna act in it. You're gonna edit it. So I'm gonna take a break on this one.
Remember how we were talking about that basketball that you don't really feel like you're a ball hog on? So can I also direct it? I'm just kidding.
That's all you.
Take the whole thing. That's funny.
I'll let you.
You don't have time for that.
Oh yeah, no, that's true. But yes, I am very excited. Nick and I are excited. We're gonna move on over to North Carolina for a bit, and that'll be great. Give it as much of all of my energy at the time. So I am thrilled to be back in front of the camera, especially with you guys. I love our studios team. So I just wanted to take a second to shout out Jen and Paula and Melissa and Jody. And I didn't miss anybody. That was everybody, right?
Yep,
yeah. And so I love being a part of this very collaborative group. It's such a blessing. I love going to our studios meetings where I know we're just going to collaborate the whole time. It's really fun. It's a good group, and God is working, and the Spirit is there. It's a very cool thing to be a part of, and I'm grateful. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of it.
God has put that group together for sure.
Amen.
And, I enjoy it. Enjoy everybody that's there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we do a pre-interview questionnaire with our guests,
as you know,
since you were so great to do that. And you answered a question I was just absolutely shocked by. And I normally wouldn't probably bring this up, but you're a Bob Dylan fan.
Oh, I love Bob
I
Dylan.
did not know this either.
I know. And when did you first see him or first start loving him, or have you gone to concerts or?
I've actually never gone to a Bob Dylan concert, and I hope I make one before he wraps it up, if he hasn't
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
But my dad introduced me. My dad was my mom and dad were both hippies, and they came to Christ in the Jesus movement, like back in the 70s. Which, by the way, I think it's called the Jesus Music. There's a movie that's out in just select theaters that does the history of Christian music. And it talks a lot about the early, when Christian music first came out, and in California in the I believe it was the 70s. And it's a great movie. You should check it out. But anyway,
We just had the filmmaker Josh Walsh on our podcast. So
for the Jesus music.
For the Jesus music, yeah.
Oh wow, I haven't seen that one yet. I want to see it.
It looks, she saw it, and
it was spectacular.
It was spectacular, and it highlights a lot of. She actually worked for Maranatha Music
in the 80s.
And so she was like, I know half of these people. It was really cool. Anyway, sorry, just
keep going.
Yes, you were on a roll.
You were talking about your parents being.
No. Well, they got saved in that movement.
Right.
And so I came up in all that music. And before that, they were, my dad was big into Dylan. And then in the 70s, he gave his life to Christ and did like 3 Christian albums. And so I was introduced to all that kind of stuff very young, probably in elementary, age. And so as I grew older, and I kind of went through high school, really looking back, and was listening to a lot of older music from the 60s and 70s, and really fell in love with Dylan. And he wrote a book called Tarantula that was just pure 100%. It's a full book of stream of consciousness. Just the whole thing makes no sense whatsoever. And so I read through that for some reason, just enjoyed that. And so I've just always loved Dylan, and I've loved how he was created. Like if you see interviews with Dylan and they're talking to him about he's a spokesman for a generation, and he's like, I'm just making stuff up, man. I don't know where they're finding all this symbolism and everything that he's doing. And he's just a wordsmith, but he's found a niche where he doesn't have to make it make sense. Other people make it make sense. And I just love that about him, that he was going to kind of play with everybody, loved him. And so the acoustic stuff, and he got tired of everybody liking him. So he switched to electric so that everybody would leave him alone. And then everybody liked that.
Yeah.
Because, and it was just something about him that where he was so creative, but he also just was so against the grain. Like, please don't like me was the most attractive thing he could do. And there was just something that was very attractive to me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. I learned a fun fact about you today.
I was thinking that. I love that we learned something new.
I know, right?
That's great.
Well, tell our listeners where they can get a hold of you.
I am at Micah Caronna on Twitter, Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. Although, just to be honest, I'm not on social media a lot anymore. I have found great peace in
amen.
Limiting my social media content.
We love that.
Yeah.
This is awesome. And I have so much love for you, and I'm so grateful for our friendship and for just the really special future I think that God is cultivating within the studio's family, and with me being a part of that. And I'm really, really, really grateful. And my mom is grateful too.
As well you should be, yes. Oh, yes, I am.
Well, I count you guys as great friends and collaborators in ministry. And so I'm super excited that God put us together.
Yes, and amen. Well, we love you, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Micah.
See ya.
For more information on Project Brickworks, visit us online at projectbrickworks.org. Subscribe to our newsletter or text BRICK to 55498 to get the latest news and updates. We love you all. Be blessed, and we'll see you next time.